presuming someone must have said something about that intro music, so thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and get it called to order at 9:06. If we could please have a moment of silence. All right, if you all would join Commissioner Smith with the pledge.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for approval of the April 9th minutes.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, a motion by Commissioner Pritchett, a second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to resolutions, awards, and presentations. We're going to start up with District 1 EMS Week.
If you guys want to come forward, EMS. All right, Chief, lead them. Good morning. How are y'all? Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Chief, I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Okay. Whereas the emergency medical professionals and volunteers provide medical care to victims of sudden, life-threatening injuries and illnesses, often under stressful conditions and high-risk situations to save lives. And whereas the 2019 National Emergency Medical Service theme, EMS Strong, Beyond the Call, reminds us that Brevard County's residents and guests benefit daily from the knowledge, skill, and judgment of the paramedics, emergency medical technicians, firefighters, dispatchers, educators, administrators, emergency physicians, emergency nurses, and others who encompass the emergency medical system. And whereas emergency medical personnel must rapidly assess, manage, and effectively provide care in unpredictable situations requiring life and death judgment. Whereas Brevard County's EMS teams unselfishly serve on the front line of health care when responding to man-made natural disasters in local, state, and national levels. And whereas the recognition is due for the emergency medical service system for its accomplishments and contributions to improve public welfare through health care, medical transportation, injury prevention, education, disaster response, homeland security, and other initiatives that reduce healthcare costs and save lives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby unanimously proclaim the week of May 19th, 2019 through May 25th as Emergency Medical Services Week. Done, ordered, and adopted this morning of May 2019. Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett, a second from Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations.
So on behalf of the hundreds of men and women of Brevard County Fire Rescue, I thank you, Commissioner Pritchett, for sponsoring this year's EMS Week. EMS is certainly the bulk of what our agency does, and we certainly appreciate the recognition. Our agency runs approximately 79,000 calls a year, EMS calls a year, and we transport almost 52,000 patients each year with 30 ambulances. Those numbers, if you think about it logistically, is quite an accomplishment. But those are just reactive numbers. So we're one of the few agencies that are both proactive and reactive. So, we react to people's emergencies, but proactively, through our community health program, we assist patients during this opioid crisis. We get in front of certain trends and issues. We also teach hands-only CPR to the community. So we're out ahead of certain issues as well. So we're not only proactive, but we're reactive as well. So we thank you for recognizing us and all the hard work that these men and women do each and every day. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
This picture is going to be a challenge.
Okay, can I get all of the tall people up on the top couple steps of the stairs?
We may need to move, Kurt.
If I can all the way to the top. Come over. Don't be shy.
All right, short people, yeah.
And then funnel up the stairs.
All right, let's step back to D to pick up one item that was brought to my attention. I would entertain a motion to approve the April 23rd minutes.
So moved?
We have a second? All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett. We have a second from Commissioner Tabayo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, carries unanimously. All right, now back to E, part 2 here. Do we have Beth Shepard in the audience? We do. All right, I hear you're going to help me out with this one.
I am. I'm here to help you out. So I'm with the University of Florida Extension Service, and we have our 4-H presentation today for our Tropicana Public Speaking Contest winners. I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, our 4-H agent, and she's going to bring off our wonderful speakers for you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Good morning. Thank you so much
Morning.
for having us today.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So we are so excited to have these 2 students here behind me with us. They participated in the 4-H Tropicana Public Speaking Program this year. This is a school enrichment program that we offer through 4-H for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade throughout the county. And they all actually research, write, and deliver a speech on a topic of their own interest. This year we had 578 students participate throughout the county. So the students here behind me today beat out 576 other students to be here today to present their speeches to you. So, without further ado, we're going to start with our 4th and 5th grade winner. His name is Aaron Gordon. He goes to R.L. Stevenson Elementary, and his topic is the weather.
Hi, my name is Aaron, and I am in 4th grade, and my speech is called The Weather, so here it is. It's hard to come up with a topic for a speech these days. I mean, what could I talk about for 3 whole minutes without offending anyone? I asked my dad, and he said, "Why don't you talk about the weather?" It seems the weather historically is the go-to topic for making polite, friendly, non-offensive small talk. Wonderful sunny day, isn't it, Mr. Smith? Gee, I hope we get some rain for your flowers, Mrs. Jones. It's hard to offend anyone when discussing the weather, unless you go up to an exceptionally tall person, cup your hands and shout, "How's the weather up there?" So please, don't try that at home. The weather doesn't care who you are or what you do. The weather treats us all the same. If it's raining, you're gonna get wet. If it's windy, you're gonna get blown around. Like it or not, we're all at the mercy of Mother Nature. Fortunately, to protect us against Mother Nature, we have a secret weapon. Our own mothers. Take an umbrella, wear a jacket and long pants, put on sunscreen, take off those wet clothes. If it weren't for the weather, I don't know if my mother would ever have anything to say to me. Different parts of the country experience different weather conditions. If you don't like freezing temperatures and 2 months of darkness, Barrow, Alaska is not the place for you. And if you don't want to live somewhere that's hot humid, flat, and swampy. Oh, please, no offense to Florida. The alligators and I love it here. In ancient times, people thought the weather was controlled by the gods. If the gods were unhappy, they would use the weather to punish you. Back then, if you were struck by lightning, it was because you did something to anger the gods. Today, we know that no one, not even the gods, can control the weather. So, if you get struck by lightning, don't take it personally. It's not because of anything you did, unless you were holding up a lightning rod in an open field during a thunderstorm. In that case, yes, it's because of something you did. So remember this, my fair weather friends. Don't rain on anyone's parade. Keep a sunny disposition, and you will have it made in the shade.
Thank you, Aaron. Up next is Zaul Cespedes from Palm Bay Elementary. He is a 6th grader, and he will be telling us all about technology. Aaron, come on. I have to do that all the time.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is a huge honor to be here with you guys. When I heard that I had outbeaten so many people, I was like, wow. I did really try my best on this, and I hope you guys enjoy my speech. So, have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why do some people think technology is a bad thing? Is it because we hear about identity theft often, or kids being bullied through social media posts? Perhaps. But the fact is, it is an essential part of our daily life and society. Every day, we wake up to find new and more advanced devices or scientific discoveries. Sure, there may be some cons, like in everything else, but there are tons of positive things about technology. There's so many good ways we can use this in, such as in education, entertainment, work, transportation, wealth, communicating, and much more. So, I'd like to discuss the impact or benefits of technology on our world. So, what impact has it had on us, you may ask? Well, the majority of us would say that the impact is positive. As I've said, we use it for so many things, we couldn't even imagine a world without it. Think about it. What would we do without cars, entertainment, or more importantly, medicine? We do know, however, technology makes our lives just a little bit easier, and speaking for kids, lots more fun. In the medical community, the advancements that have been made in life-altering diseases have come by way of technology. Today, for example, lives are being saved because somebody invented scam machines to find cancer in early enough stages to send it into remission, or even better, remove it completely from our bodies. We can also communicate with others clear across our country and abroad, whether it is through social media, text messages, or cell phone calls. And finally, I'm sure I don't have to explain how the entertainment industry uses this great tool too. Technology is also used in schools every single day, whether it is in the classrooms or miles away through virtual school. We investigate subjects and questions that only computers and softwares have the answers to. So, in closing, technology is, of course, of pros and cons in the advancement of our world. But I personally believe that Jason Silva put it best when he said, technology is, of course, a double-edged sword. Just like fire, it can cook our food, but also burn us. Thank you.
I feel a little inadequate after that. I don't think I can speak that well now. That's pretty good.
Completely agree. Thank you again for having us this morning. Zaul and Aaron, do you have a small token of their appreciation for you before we head on out?
Uh-oh.
Yes, it is a great honor to perform in front of you. I was really nervous when I went in front of you, but you seem really nice, and I like that. I'm just happy to be here today and performing in front of you, my speech, and thank you.
I want to test your diplomacy here. Who do you think was the nicest? Say, let's hear it for them all again. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll share it with you. Oh, let's pass it down then. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner, there is an open seat.
I get heartburn.
Which of the two should we have set up here? There we go. Should we all get in for a photo? What do you think? Let's do that. Why don't we all get in there? All right, moving right along. Third item we have is a resolution recognizing the IRL Appreciation Day. I'm taking it that's why we have two folks in, well, one in lagoonish colors and the other's got a little in the tie. Ms. Martin?
Hi, Mel. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, ma'am.
Did you have anybody you want to come up with you?
I put out the word, but is there anyone in the audience that is engaged in lagoon education or shares things online, or this is so depressing. This is why we're here today.
Actually,
No.
everybody is. But I think the whole room would have to come up with you.
I was going to say
Here we
that
go.
everyone's involved in talking to their neighbors, and if you have a business, to put up a sign to along these lines. So.
Okay, I'm going to read this, and then if you would like to say a few things, we would love to hear from you. I haven't seen you up here in a long time.
I know, it's been a while.
Good to see you. Whereas Brevard County has united as a community to take urgent necessary actions towards cleaning up and restoring the Indian River Lagoon, one of the economic and environmental assets of our county. Whereas nearly half of the lagoon's nutrient load that creates algae blooms and kills fish comes from stormwater runoff and groundwater base flow, to include leaching septic, leaking sewers, fertilizer, reclaimed water, and decomposing vegetation such as grass clippings. Whereas June 1st begins the ban of fertilizer use containing nitrogen and phosphorus during the rainy seasons, which lasts through September 30 due to excess fertilizer use contributing to the water quality problems and harmful algae blooms. Whereas every resident in Brevard County can play an important role in the health of the lagoon by adhering to the summer fertilizer ban, not washing grass clippings into storm drains, and have septic tanks or lateral sewer lines inspected, or any other activity that may allow harmful nutrients and toxic contaminants to enter storm drains. Whereas the health of our lagoon is a community-wide responsibility and will take a community-wide awareness towards habit-based solutions. Whereas annual occasions such as the start of fertilizer ban and hurricane season will allow focus and synchronized communication throughout Brevard County regarding how personal responsibility and effective preparation can allow us to live in harmony with our natural environment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County does hereby recognize June 1, 2019 as Indian River Lagoon Appreciation Day. And we expressly hope that the community, businesses, organizations, governmental entities throughout the Space Coast will take this opportunity to commemorate the lagoon's heritage, importance, and requirements of us, such as responsibility in maintaining our yards, responsibly checking our waste systems, and responsibly considering everything we put into our storm drains, so we may ensure each other's actions, however big or small, to be lagoon friendly. Mr. Chair, I make a motion to pass this resolution this 21st day of May 2019.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Second. Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett, a second from Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sounds like it carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Pritchett. And my appreciation for the board and the previous board to making so many things happen for the lagoon in practically a very short time when you're talking about the grand scheme of what all has been going on and how we've been neglecting a lot of things for the lagoon. So I think that we've done a very good job as a government, as taxpayers, as organizations, and some businesses have stepped up. And I just think that we can do more. I think that having a rallying date of June 1st being the kickoff for the fertilizer ban is a nice time for us all to not only remember and appreciate, but also do something extra. It should, honestly, and hindsight, it could have been Lagoon Action Day, but next time. So things like I mentioned before, but every homeowner, every tenant, every resident can not only abide by the fertilizer ban or do something more about their septic systems or their sewage lines, but also they can tell or talk to every neighbor on their street, something like that. Businesses can put up a sign. We can be very creative in this venture, and it does take a community. We should all remember that we all believe in personal responsibility, and that's the bottom line. And although the government and the Lagoon Trust Fund, things are rolling already, we really need the public awareness on these issues, because even though it seems that we're all anonymous because we only have 1 yard. However, that's not what the Lagoon thinks. It really is an all of us issue. So thank you again for your leadership and this call out to our community.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Do you guys want to come down for this one?
Sure.
I'll add. You look so cute today.
Yeah. With the pink tie, we got to get you in every photo.
I was hoping you would say I was going to join you.
No peace miles for you.
I've run my 2 miles.
2.02. All right, looking at the consent agenda for item F, does anyone wish to have anything pulled here?
I got National Safe Boating Week.
Oh, one more.
Oh, thank you. Just kidding. Wanted to see if anyone was going to catch me on that. National Safe Boating Week, District 2. If this will pull up for me, I have a resolution. Right. Whereas Florida leads the U.S. in registered vessels with about 1 million, with over 22 million boaters using and enjoying Florida's beautiful waterways annually, and whereas Florida leads the U.S. in the number of boating accidents and deaths, with drowning being the leading cause of death, 84.5%, despite the prevalence of strong swimmers, and whereas 70% of the operators involved in accidents have no formal boater education, and whereas the National Safe Boating Council and the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary are kicking off the 2019 Wear It Safe Boating campaign to educate the boating community about wearing life jackets, taking the About Safe Boating course, having their boats receive a safety examination for required equipment, and promoting other safe boating practices. And whereas Brevard County has several organizations involved in helping to educate the public, including the U.S. Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the U.S. Sail and Power Squadrons, and the Agriculture and Marine Unit of BCSO, all of which emphasize getting a vessel safety check, displaying a safety seal, wearing a life jacket, and attending the classroom version of About Boating Safely to attain a Florida boating license. And whereas those who have taken the classroom version of About Boating Safely, given by the USCG Auxiliary or the U.S. Power Squadrons, have less than a 1.9% fatality rate. And whereas these organizations offer educational opportunities to the public throughout the year using methods such as vessel inspections, safe boating classes, hands-on training, GPS classes, flare use, boating guide pamphlets, fire extinguisher seminars, educational exhibits, knot tying, I could use that, classroom presentations, and in-the-water life jacket demonstrations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby support the goals of the National Safe Boating Council and proclaims May 18th through the 24th, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week, and urges all those who boat to wear their life jacket, learn more about safe boating practices, act responsibly while on or near the water, and take a safe boating class from the USCG Auxiliary. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this morning, 2019. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett, a second from Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Would you all like to come up?
Good morning. Good morning. Appreciate your concern, as Brevard has always been concerned about boating safety. I mean, that is a major economic driver also for revenue in Brevard County based on anyway, I just want to say thank you, and that our flotilla has been serving Brevard County for over 61 years. We started the same year that NASA started, and again, supported the space program as far as safety zones and that sort of thing. And our flotilla has provided over 10,000 hours, volunteer hours, that's at no cost to the Coast Guard or the government. Just in last year, over 500 vessel exams and almost 1,000 students trained in boating safety last year. So we've been working hard, as well has the Power Squadron, our partners in this safety venture. Again, thank you very much. And we want to remind everybody to wear their life jackets, and that's why we're wearing them today.
This is an inflatable. It worked.
Where do we get one of those? They look like fun.
They really save your life.
You could put one on. Put one on before you work out and pull it under your T-shirt, right? Pull it out under your T-shirt. No, when you're working out, make it look like big muscles.
We have an upcoming event for the Power Squadron is organizing.
Yes, under the education, the America's Boating Club of South Brevard, we have changed our name, we're in transition now, is holding a flare-up, and this is a hands-on training. We will shoot aerial flares, light flares, pop smoke, and we'll learn how to use them before you need them. Don't hold it over your boat when you light it. Rule number 1. And this will be at the O'Galley Boat Ramp on Saturday, June 1st. It starts at 10, and after the flare-up, we're going to have a ramp cleanup in conjunction with Keep Brevard Beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right. I was chomping at the bit to get to consent agenda here, so let's go for it. I'm going to pull item 13. Would anyone like anything else pulled?
Nope, I'm good, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to vote no without comment on F5. I'd like to pull F32. And I'd like to pull F33, please.
F32 and F33 pulled. Okay, so absent F13, F32, and F33, I'd entertain a motion to pass the remainder with Commissioner Tabaya. Yes, thank you. I almost missed that. So let's take a look here. We've got 3 that are questions only as to items that are not being pulled or voted no on. Mr. Knox has one on F5, though, so let's...
It's not being pulled, so I think you're good.
I've got questions only.
Just questions only? Okay. Okay, perfect. See again?
Did you have a F card over there?
Oh, thank you. Yes, thanks. Yeah, we had a couple come in as well after the fact. Let's see, I'm sorry. So we have one for F5 here from Ginger Knox. Ms. Knox?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that confusion. We just got a slew of them today.
Great. So I guess I just get to make my comments. I don't really get to go over all of the arguments that I had that weren't originally heard during the...
If you would, let's just start with your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to discuss anything on the item you'd like to.
Awesome. Ginger Knox, 2720 Pinecone Drive, Melbourne, 32940.
Right, floor is yours.
All right. As you guys know, I have put in an appeal for this matter, which has been completely ignored. Apparently, you don't actually have an appeal process for any information that's passed at this board level. I took it to the county court. They brought it back to you. I was then told by your zoning office that there isn't actually an appeal process. So as far as I know, I can't appeal your decision, even though it wasn't posted correctly, it wasn't noticed per law. I wasn't allowed my time up here to speak during the matter because I was told that it was going to be pulled from the agenda. Then Mrs. Nardi went ahead and called for a vote anyways. So I just wanted to be up here under public record and say there was an appeal filed within the 30 days that it states in your code that an appeal can be filed. However, it was completely ignored because apparently there's not an appeal process that citizens are privy to, I'll say. Maybe an attorney could figure it out, but us as citizens can't go through the process in any way. You get sent to the court, you get sent back here, then you're told nobody knows how to do the appeal. I want the citizens of Brevard County to know that when I came up here to do my PowerPoint presentation that was provided to this board prior to the meeting in which you approved this agenda item, I was told by Mrs. Nardi, don't go through the PowerPoint presentation because they are going to drop this. They're not going to, they just said, Mr. Knox just said that he was not going for this zoning change, so don't even bother doing the PowerPoint presentation. Then I sat down, then Mrs. Nardi called for the vote without letting me come back up and do the presentation that was provided to this board. So I would like to make sure everyone in this county knows that this matter that you're voting for today was not noticed properly, and you were made aware of that prior to the meeting. I was not given my time as a citizen to tell anybody anything about no traffic studies being done, all of the things that were neglected on this, which obviously I believe it's because Mr. Knox is the attorney on this matter. I don't think that this would ever have been pushed through like this if he wasn't the attorney on this matter, and you guys have dropped the ball on this tremendously. I'm not going to stop the appeal process. I'm going to try to continue, and I obviously will continue to watch this meth rehab that's going into a Vieira Suntree residential area throughout this process and see if you continue to let it go without any oversight at all from the county. And I can see Mrs. Nardi's not here for obvious reasons. I would just like to say for everyone else in the county, maybe there's a little bit more going on here with this meth rehab that you guys need to look into. That's it.
Thank you. I will just say one quick item on that. But we do have Mr. Tabaya having pressed the light here, so would you like to have a moment? Or is that an old one?
No, that was just on the polling of the F5,
Okay,
32,
thank you.
33.
Okay, just real briefly, for everyone's edification, our chair is out. Her son is graduating from, it's a mouthful, U.S. Army Aviation Logistics School in Virginia, so she's up there with her family celebrating that. Otherwise, I'm sure she would be here. All right, let's see. So as to the consent agenda,
I was going to make a motion to approve consent agenda, pulling out F13, 32, and 33, sir.
perfect. Do we have a second?
Can I amend that with my no vote on F5 as previously stated?
Perfect. Do we have a second on that? All right. Clerk's on board with what we're voting on? Thank you all. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes. So moving on. Public comment. We have quite a few items here. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to revisit it later? Whatever order you would like to do it in. Now, if you guys want to do it now, let's do that now. Then that's fine. So as to F13, given that this is a D5 item and our D5 commissioner is out for good reason, I was hoping that someone might consider moving to continue it and putting it on a subsequent consent agenda.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Was there going to be any problem if we table this for the?
No, I don't believe there's any problem with it. It's a pretty straightforward item, though, but either way, it's fine.
Okay, I make a motion to table till next meeting.
All right, do we have a second?
Matt, quick question. Next meeting being the 30th, the zoning one, or the next regular commission meeting?
The zoning meeting.
I believe we could put it on the 30th.
Okay, then second.
Perfect. All right. So that's what you understood with your motion as well. Okay. So we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett, a second from Commissioner Tabaya to move this to the 30th to add it to the consent agenda. Am I right? Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. So let's look at 32 next. F32. So the interlocal agreement. Mr. Tabaya, since you pulled it, I'll give you the floor here. Thank you, sir.
This is, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not the first time that we've seen an interlocal agreement. We came together as a board 5-0 to authorize Mr. Abate to bring forward our wishes so we can get the CRAs locked down. We asked for 5 things, and we did so unanimously. I believe Mr. Abate did his level best to meet those 5. However, this interlocal agreement does not meet 2 of the 5, and I think they are pretty substantial in the desires that we asked for. So I will I've handed out a chart here so you can follow along to go over this briefly. We asked for it to sunset early. The Rockledge CRA has done that, and they've gone a long way by shutting it down almost 1% early. A big one here, we asked for no new debt. There's not said provision in this interlocal agreement. It says no new debt past the sunset. That does not meet the request that we put forward. Doesn't even come close. Annual report, that was a great idea by Mr. Abate. They have met that one. We asked for unspent money above the debt service to go to roads. Again, it does not have that provision in it. There is the internal audit provision. I don't want to put these in any order, but certainly the debt and the money unspent going to roads would be the 2 most important to me. I think if it was the transverse of this and the 3 yeses were no's and 2 no's yes, I may be more inclined to vote for this, but I would certainly hope that we would vote this down and ask Mr. Abate to see if we could get a little bit closer to our unanimous request. So I would, after discussion, make a motion to reject this Rockledge CLA interlocal agreement and authorize the county manager to come forward with or meet with Rockledge again and get closer to the 5 things that we came together and asked for, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table from you. We can seek a second now or seek a second after discussion.
I'd rather whatever you want.
Let's seek a second after discussion in that case. Ms. Pritchett.
Yeah, just a reminder, when we went through these workshops with the cities about 2 years ago, we sat down and went through all the information. And at that time, the vote was that we got them to agree to come back with a date to sunset the CRAs or have a time period, because the biggest concern was these things never end. When we came to the commission after that, we gave the county manager a list of things that we would like for him to try to incorporate into them. And it wasn't necessarily, you have to have all these things or it won't go through. because some of them are going to do something different. I think Cocoa Beach was building a garage. So, there's some things that they have planned out that they're doing. I think Rockledge has come to the table and tried to get a good agreement. And again, they don't have to do this. There is nothing that says they have to make an agreement with us. But the municipalities kind of working with us agreed to try to get some agreements together with us, and I really appreciate it. Mr. Abate, do you feel this is brought to the table some things that are going to help our county and kind of done what we wanted them to do as far as CRAs, sir?
Commissioner, let me answer that by saying we had a proposed agreement about a year and a half ago that did not come to the board. This agreement has substantially more items in consistent with the guidelines that the board had than the previous agreement did, so it is significantly better. I would also add two other points. One, that on the indebtedness, there is a provision that indicates that the city agreed to assume and be fully liable for any indebtedness owed by the CRA after the CRA termination date. There's also something that limits the administrative expenses to 5% instead of what's statutorily provided at 25% of the county's TIF money. So clearly it does not have every one of the guidelines fully. Commissioner Tobias is right, but it was the best agreement that I was able to negotiate at this point, and that's why we brought it back. And I do believe actually I know that the City of Rockledge has entered into this agreement and has executed it at the council level, but it is obviously up to this board to determine whether it's acceptable or not.
Thank you. So, and also looking at this, I know we go back and forth on the debt. It's really hard to find a bank that'll give you a loan past the contract of what you're receiving these funds for. So I appreciate that y'all put in that anything goes after that, you're going to go ahead and be responsible for. But I would like to be the bank that would give you the loan past which you have designated income coming in to cover that debt. I've never seen it happen. And as an accountant, I would never do it. So I'm glad that's in there. It gives a little comfort to us contractually. But I think this is a good contract you've come to the table with. And thank you, Rockledge.
All right, Commissioner Smith, and then, Commissioner Tobias, then Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, and this would, I fear that eventually we are going to have a critical need that may come before this board asking for us to go over the constitutional mandated cap. So I take all monies extremely seriously. The one question this would come down to is a yes or no, and this would go to Mr. Abate. Would this allow Rockledge CRA to take out new debt?
I believe the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
The debt would have to be payable within the amount of TIFs they're currently getting. It will change nothing between what the county and the city has agreed to as far as these TIF funds.
Thank you. I was going to say that.
Okay, so we got a ditto from you.
I would just like to say that when I came into office, CRAs were a big topic. And an awful lot of people were anti CRAs. And I understand why. But at the same time, the cities entered into contracts with the county, and they thought that they could use them as they perceived they should. My problem with that was that it was such an open-ended deal that it just went on ad infinitum. And so my main purpose was to try and put an end to these CRAs, but work with the cities, because number one, you have to understand that the cities, they're really in the driver's seat. Once they get the CRA the way they're written now, they can just keep going on in perpetuity as long as they stayed in debt. So it was my idea that we needed to come together, act as adults, get everybody in the room, and see if we couldn't work with the cities and help them understand what our position was that at some point you have to end. So fortunately, most of these cities have done so, Rockledge being one of them, and again, they don't have to be here at all. They don't have to agree to anything, and they've agreed to substantially most of what we wanted, and the little bit that they didn't, I think we can work with. So I'm totally in favor of this. They've made a good faith effort to stand up, be counted, be responsible to the county, and I think we should show their appreciation by voting yes for this.
And just real briefly, since everyone's light is now off, I appreciate what Rockledge has done here. I've spoken with Mr. Abate in length about the prior negotiations that have taken place between the county and the city of Rockledge that were, I guess to just put it rather bluntly, somewhat fruitless up till recently. I am happy that we've had some forward progress here. Does it contain everything I'd like to see? No, I'm not going to say that it does, but I think you need to evaluate each of these on a case-by-case basis. I don't think any city is identical to another city. So while this I think is good in respect to Rockledge, it may not be good in respect to some other city that's not yet entered into an interlocal with the county on their CRA or CRAs. But at this point, I'm certainly supportive of it. I think it's a good step in the right direction, not just a technical step in the right direction. It increases transparency. I do agree the early sunset, it doesn't really accomplish a lot on account of it being a very small shift in dates, but I think it's certainly symbolic that they're looking at moving in the correct direction and working with the county, so it is appreciated as well. But unless there's further comment, we did have a motion from Commissioner Tabaya to deny it, and I'll entertain any seconds. Okay, seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. Do we have any other motions?
I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this measure.
Second.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Smith to approve, second from Commissioner Pritchett. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
All right, 3-1 with Commissioner Tabaya opposed. Looking at the next item, 33, Commissioner Tabaya had that pulled, so I'll give you the floor again on that.
Thank you, and just to be clear, we'll be voting yes on this one. I just wanted to take time to congratulate Mr. Denninghoff and staff on his team on an exceptionally clean audit, no pun intended, on the South Central Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant expansion. So there was quite a bit that went into that. Our auditors came out and saw that not only was the discharge being clean, so were the numbers. So I really appreciate the work that you guys put into all that stuff. And I know this should go on consent, but we far too often gloss over that with the money that we use. It's done in a very responsible manner. And again, thank you to you and your team for making it flow so effortlessly. And with that, I make a motion to accept.
All right, motion from Commissioner Tabaya to accept.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Smith. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
I had to second my voting buddy.
Oh, there you go. Are you going to get him a T-shirt?
Maybe.
All right, moving right along to public comment. So we have, I guess, kind of a first on this where we've received more than 10 comment cards. I did speak with Ms. Bentley earlier, and she's advised me, and I invite her to correct me if there's something I'm misstating or not adding adequate context to. We limit the first round of public comment to 30 minutes. If each speaker was given the traditional 3 minutes, that means we're going to get to the first 10. So if you were anything past 10, what we're going to do, rather than just kicking you down the can, I think the fairest thing to do is to give you an opportunity to speak. But we'll put you at the back end of the agenda at item K as in kilo for public comments. So I apologize to anyone that's past that, but in keeping with our board policies, we do have to limit it to 30 minutes. So with that said, we're going to start up with John Weiler, who has drawn lucky number 1. Yeah, if you remind me if I forget. Thanks. Thank you, sir. And if you give us your name and your address as well.
John Weiler, 4240 South Tropical Trail, Merritt Island. Commissioners, I'd like to speak for a moment or two on the Banana River and Indian River Lagoon status from a citizen standpoint. I have personally read the entire Indian River Lagoon project plan. In general, I think it's a good summary of the various contributors to the lagoon condition. Unfortunately, the priorities of actions and where funding should be expended are not in sync, in my opinion, with public opinion and common logic. In County Commission District 2, Commissioner Lober and his staff started evaluating various indicated causes of lagoon damage in early 2018, right after he was elected. The first concern was our central sewage treatment plants. I am happy to report that the three major treatment plants in District 2, in other words, the Sykes Creek plant, the Cocoa Beach plant, and the Cape Canaveral plant, are operating in an efficient manner, have excess capacity to process with no discharges to the lagoon. That's in District 2. I urge each of the other commissioners, if they have not already done so, to visit the waste treatment plants in their districts and gain a first-hand understanding of the central sewage disposal systems and determine if the plants are okay and the infrastructure leading to them are in good condition. This would be valuable for the whole project. I think we could all agree that leakage of raw, untreated sewage into the lagoon is unacceptable, and when it occurs, it is probably the greatest threat. What was discovered is that many of the main lines that bring raw sewage to the plants in District 2 are decayed and in need of repair or replacement and have been part of the problem for some time. This should be the first priority, to assure that the existing central sewer system is not contributing to the problem. In my observation, this is the largest contributor to the lagoon problem. The second priority should be conversion of septic systems within 100 feet of the lagoon to a central sewer system that is properly operating and maintained. The Indian River Lagoon Plan identifies key zones that fit this category. These should be expedited without delay. I have encountered what appears to be an overburdened bureaucratic process for getting these projects expedited. A more streamlined and timely process is needed to move forward. One of the areas I found missing, and maybe I just overlooked it from the Indian River Lagoon Plan, is our overpopulation of manatees. Now, there'll be some outcry, there's no way, but it is. The manatee population is greater than the lagoon seagrass acreage can sustainably report, even if it was all back in place. I witnessed over the last several weeks the recovery of some grass areas in the Banana River Lagoon where I live. This last weekend, a herd, and I mean a herd of manatees, essentially uprooted most of the new seagrass. Seagrass.
Mr. Weiler, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're out. So if you want to finish your sentence, I'll let you do that. But
thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, we have Mr. Stasek, front and center already. It's a good spot.
Good morning, Chairman Lober and Commissioners. I want to say thank you very much for your service to our community.
Could I ask you for your address before you start?
Sure. I'm Phil Stasek. I am North Merritt Island, speaking on behalf of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. I do want to say thank you for your service to our community, and a special congratulations to Commissioner Isnardi on her son's graduation, and our thanks to him for his service to our nation. It's a very important time to graduate, and we congratulate him. Anyway, we want to thank you, by the way, for your compliance with Florida's sunshine laws. We know that you take very seriously the question of ethics and maintaining the appearance and functional ethical standards that we all expect. You do represent us, and it's very important that you do this. We read with interest and concern recently, of course, when we saw the legal services being provided from one commissioner to another commissioner's families, and I actually did call to follow up and see that what we saw written in the paper was correct, and that in fact it may indeed be in compliance with the law, with sunshine laws. But the question is appearance. As we know, it's very important that as you conduct your services to our community, that you do comply with the letter of the law, but it's also important that the appearance of your actions, especially among you, is clean and that there are no questions in the mind of the voters. Because when citizens have questions, it lowers your credibility, and we do not want that. We want to be able to trust you. And so literally I'm here this morning just to be the little voice of the conscience of the community, to say, please be careful as you do conduct your business, as you do go about your business, to be careful with regard to ethics in your interaction with each other, doing business, etc. And possibly it would be worthwhile to consider independent oversight when a question comes up of one commissioner's interaction with another. Perhaps an independent oversight or some kind of reference would be helpful to keep everybody confident in your actions and to maintain that trust that we have come to expect from you. So we thank you again for your service. We thank you for maintaining the highest of ethical standards. Do you have any questions for me?
If I can get my microphone to work, I just want to thank you for coming up and expressing your viewpoint so respectfully.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
We appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Tovey. And I apologize, but I'm going to ask you again if you'd put your address on the record. And if I forget, if someone would nudge me, try to do my level best to get that correct.
You can start the clock. Charles Tovey, 2555 Melbourne, Florida. This is some literature about my family being the first family in Brevard. And thank you.
If you want to bring it up, we can pass it out just to save you some time.
On my card, I wrote about my fines and fees against my property, and I wasn't able to make the last meeting because of family medical issues and the rest of the things. But I read that we're going to not see people for code enforcement fines and fees or things, and I'm asking that you reserve me the right and grandfather me in so I can present this to the board, because it was the board's name on all the letters that were written to me, and besides Palm Shore's signatures. And I think that all these times I've been here and all the people that I've addressed and asked help from, that I'm still looking for guidance and help and things, and I guess I'll work it out myself, but I think it's a spirit of prejudice, and that's what I feel our country is polluted with. And why I don't get recognition for things that other people get recognition and other things, I don't know. That's between personal issues. I'd also like to speak about the lagoon. I've been doing a little bit of research and things, but they have $1 million homes in South Florida, which is part of Florida, which don't have septic systems, and they're not on sewer lines. They're spending $1 million for a house, and it's on a composted toilet. And why we don't have that incorporated into our things, our systems, and that's other people's jobs. The other thing I'd like to say is about the septic tanks. We're making these people do all these things to their septic tanks, but yet the municipalities are dumping millions of gallons into the lagoon. And how can we get an accurate measure on anything about the septic tanks when you have these entities dumping millions of gallons in the lagoon? And I feel that all those septic tanks together for 10 years wouldn't equal the amount of stuff dumped in a lagoon from municipalities. I'm also 10 days left on the lagoon. It will be finished. It will take time for it to recover itself, but I'll be done with my work and regular maintenance by the end of this month. Have a good time in June. There were other things that I wanted to recognize Sid Liddell, Detective Sid Liddell. He was a great man, and he was willing to help people that needed help, and God bless his family and his soul. Amen.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up, we have Larry Lallo. I've asked him to come to give us a little bit of a heads up as to Myra and who they are, hopefully introduce himself before he starts knocking on any commissioners' doors.
Thank you, Commissioner Lober and commissioners. I'm pleased to be here. I new on the job 6 months. I guess I'm starting to become less new on the job, but really enjoying it quite well. I wanted to introduce my redevelopment manager, Cindy Fox, formerly Cindy Fox, Cindy Thurman now. 18 years with the county in the planning and zoning. I think many of you may know Cindy. and some of you that don't, but she's been quite an asset for the office, especially when it comes to facilitating business inquiries and requests that come in day to day. So I've thought about this a little bit, and I just want to share a little bit about my background. I have 30 years experience in economic and community development, third generation Floridian, but I only moved here about 2 years ago, if that makes any sense. So my community development experience has not been prior to Florida with CRAs. So when I saw CRA legislation, I thought it was a good tool, and then ultimately, became a CRA executive director. So here I am. In terms of Myra, I think there's a few things I'd like to share with you that maybe you haven't thought about. That make Myra unique and maybe more important in many ways than maybe the average CRA. First of all, Myra is the first county CRA and the only county CRA where the county commissioners created, and the county commissioners are the board of governance. So in a sense, I report to my bosses, Frank Abate and John Denninghoff, but the county commissioners is the board of governance for the CRA. The CRA is unique in that the delegation for the day-to-day administration in terms of governance is given to an executive administrative board of volunteers comprised of real estate development managers, commercial business owners, and those types of people. Also, I just want to share that some of the unique things that Myra is confronted with day to day, and since its creation. In 1950, population was around 3,000, 3,500, I think, on Merritt Island. As many of you know, by 1970, the population had become tenfold. With population growth came a lot of Merritt Island's issues, with unregulated growth that we face continually, even still to this day. And I think that the reason that the county created Myra were kind of interesting. And some things you might want to keep into context here of our value to the county. We are responsible for 6% of the county area is Merritt Island. 8% of the county population is Merritt Island. 8% of the county small businesses are Merritt Island, over 1,000. We have brought in 10% of the county sales tax.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got to call you there, but I do want to add, as to what you said. I've spoken with Larry actually prior to my having started in this position, and I guess you were on the job, probably 4 weeks?
Yes.
Something like that. So we started at roughly the same time, and I can't tell you that anything but that we could not have done better than Larry, and I'm not trying to inflate his ego by any means, but the concerns that I've had with respect to Myra that have not already been addressed or in the process of being addressed, I know that Larry's going to be getting with several of the board members to address some concerns I have regarding the beautification program and the facade grants to ensure that money is not going to businesses that would otherwise be paying for the same work to be done anyway. I think he's certainly someone with a background in economic development that understands the value of being able to show an ROI on any county funds or any CRA funds that are expended in the CRA strategic area. So I just want to give everyone a heads up on the record. As was mentioned, we do respect sunshine, and as lovely as it would be to have these conversations outside, I just don't have that ability. There is going to be an item coming up in all likelihood in July dealing with Myra to help us tighten up some areas of concern and potentially also to codify some areas that aren't codified. It's not by any means going to eliminate Myra or destroy Myra or change their operating budget, but I think it's a good step in the right direction, and I appreciate Larry coming out and Cindy coming out as well just to come by and introduce themselves, because I think this is going to be a topic that there'll probably be substantial discussion on come July. So thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Pete Fuskus, who's on our Budget Review Committee. Good to see you, Pete. And if I could ask you if you put your address on the record as well, or at least your city.
Yes, Peter Fuskus, 1855 Sandy Creek Lane, Malabar, Florida.
And thank you for the invitation. This is really a terrific way to be briefed on our committees and agencies. Budget review, an update. We have had 2 budget review meetings. One is an organizational meeting and a planning meeting. We have a full 5-member review board, the first time since 2017. 2 members had previous service and 3 are new members. The meetings run 2 hours. We plan to schedule them every 2 weeks. The new members were briefed on last year's budget and a peek at this year's, and the budget process by Frank Abate, county manager, was kind enough to give us a review, and Jill Hayes, budget director. We discussed reviewing this year's budget in the following areas: individual agencies, individual programs, the budget process, and some agency presentations. Specific to these items, we discussed the following, and I'm saying it was just a discussion: a standardized fiscal impact statement on all changes in new and old programs, purchases, in short, ordinances that have a fiscal impact, sort of a universal cost-benefit analysis. We looked at a 5-year, discussed the 5-year strategic plan rolled over annually with budget priorities. We want to look at this committee itself and discuss and make recommendations for any changes in composition and operation. Financial controls and financial organization. We discussed agencies, mosquito control, public works, waste management, landfill issues, enterprise funds, and economic development and permitting, debt service and cash investment policies. The more money we have, the more money you can constructively apply. So that's the enterprise funds and economic development. It's very important. We want to take a look, some people want to take a closer look at employee compensation, manpower, staffing, and costs. We also discuss how do you review the sheriff's budget. Capital replacement reserves was an issue, and the focus will be on the general fund and various revenue enhancers and expenditures. In short, we wish to enhance transparency and visibility of the county budget, provide financial tools for the county Board of Commissioners, and transparency and access for the budget tax for county taxpayers.
You timed that about perfectly. I like that. Let me ask you.
I rushed a little.
Well, I couldn't tell. But just a question for you in terms of the board. Do you think it's about the proper size, or do you think we could use more or fewer people on there?
Well, I've given. I think it's an opportunity. We ought to discuss that. I think it's an opportunity for us to go out into the not necessarily just the private sector, but the private sector. We had an industry review board a number of years ago that was excellent, in which Harris Corporation participated, a number of other corporations participated, and I think we should look at adding a number of professional managers, contract managers, budget specialists, what have you, and then have them focus on certain areas each year. And we can, as a board, then embrace or consider how that could be used at the county level. And it was really well done a number of years ago. And we issued a huge report, changes in purchasing and consolidating purchasing and so on. And I think we, bear in mind, we have so many new people. We have to wait until they get up to speed before we can discuss expanding this, but it certainly is a possibility.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Mr. Fuskus and volunteers like him and Mr. Weiler, George back there. These guys, they're volunteering their time. They give terrific input. They have a lot of experiences that they bring to the table, and there's an awful lot of people like them, and I just wanted to give them a shout out because I think it's important that we recognize them because they serve in anonymity and they don't get paid, but they care about the community and they give us information. Sometimes we don't agree, but it's important that we get the information because just like us, we don't always agree either, but we care about the county, and that's why we're all here. So I just wanted to thank you guys.
That's a good point. I told Mr. Weiler, and he was amazingly appreciative when I told him a few weeks ago. He was there on a Friday in my office helping me out on some things. I said to him, I said, buddy, I said, you're doing such a good job. I'm going to double what you get paid. He said, right on the spot, I don't need approval for this one. I'm going to double your 0 to 0 because I appreciate you.
Maybe we should even triple it.
You know, we can look at that. We can look at that. All right, next up we have Martha Brandt. Is that a Brandt? Bryant? I apologize.
Hi, I'm Martha Bryant. My address is 206 Southeast 1st Street in Satellite Beach. I just mostly wanted to express my concern with the ALS in...
I'll pause you for a second.
I mostly wanted to express a strong concern of the ALS people in South Patrick Shores and let you guys know that I think that, more testing, testing should be done. I don't, necessarily know all the statistic things but I've lived in South Patrick Shores in 2 houses since I was born. And both streets that I've lived on intersect. And since I've been diagnosed with ALS, there's been somebody on each of those streets that's a friend of mine who has been diagnosed as well. And I know you guys don't necessarily see the personal, things like that. But you guys, I just hope you take that into consideration when you, see the other people help and fight for us to consider doing those things. So
I appreciate you coming out. Let me ask you, in terms of the community, do you think most of the community around you is aware of what the concerns are with that, or do you think that it's just the folks that tend to live in the canals? I mean, it's still an issue either way.
Neither of the houses I'm talking about are on the canal.
Oh, they're not?
No, they're not. They're in South Patrick Shores. But no. So, no, and it is other streets too. I do know of another one, I heard of another one on the canals. There's another one on Ocean and that's not on a canal either in the past, but they're gone as well. So I don't think the life expectancy is not that long, so you don't see people with ALS sticking around too long to be able to.
I appreciate your coming out. It's definitely an important topic, and I can tell you that there are folks on the commission that are sensitive to it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Chet Ellsworth.
Chet Ellsworth, 989 North Highway A1A, Indialantic. I'm here to support John Tobiah and Christine Esnardi in that certain event that occurred at the workshop last week. Mr. Stasek earlier commented on the need for an independent oversight. And in my opinion, we need a citizens' grand jury to figure out what happened there. On that day, I consider the censorship or the termination of that meeting by a 4-to-1 vote as censorship and an implementation of Sharia policy in this court. And the folks that are involved with that, without that vote, should resign. In furtherance of that, the two people, John Tobiah and Christine Isnardi, should carry on with the business here today. The folks that were involved with that coup against Ms. Isnardi should be accounted for by a, as Mr. Stasek says, and he came here and threatened you with this independent oversight. There's a very serious thing that occurred there that day. I won't go into the people that I think are involved. I believe that all that should resign have FARA indications, FARA law violations, and possible treason violations. That meeting was very important. You censored the public, all of you except Mr. Tobiah and I believe Ms. Isnardi. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to call.
Ms. Bridget.
Real quickly on that, just so the public knows, when we came to that workshop, most of the items that we were going to workshop as far as the advisory boards, we had been working through consistently over the commission meetings. We'd worked through some of the TDC issues, and we probably should have called that meeting before, because workshops can last 2 to 3 hours, a lot of staff time. But when I got the book, I realized it was kind of minimal. Commissioner Tobiah did give us some information, by the way, sir, good information. There's some things in there that I think are going to be very easy for us to change and put through. But it really wasn't necessary to do a 2-hour workshop, and therefore staff was able to get back to work. There was no coup involved. There was, you know, if we start doing business up here because what's going on with a few people in a municipality, it's not a good process up here at the county level. Probably should have called it before, but when I got there, I realized it just really was kind of a waste of our time at that time. Did it stop public comment? No. You're able to come here and speak. That was a workshop on that topic, and that topic really didn't require a whole lot more conversation.
And I'll just add to it as well. My recollection of it, and anyone's welcome to correct me up here if they recall differently, was that it was a 4-1 vote to cancel, not a 3-2. So I think there was some misinformation with respect to that. But beyond that, let's go ahead and move on. Ms. Patel, you're up next. If we can get your address.
Hi, my name's Stacy Patel. I live at 315 Jackson Avenue in Satellite Beach, and I serve as the chair of the Brevard Democratic Party. Last week, our organization passed a resolution that calls on this commission to work actively to protect the public trust. A former local public official now faces serious criminal charges of organized corruption. Our county commission is now also under public scrutiny, as the accused is married to the chair of our county commission and has retained the vice chair as his attorney, even if that role is limited in scope. While we don't allege or imply impropriety, there are clear connections and now legally protected confidences between the criminally accused and our county commission. In the wake of recent arrests, we would simply ask that the members of this body be especially careful to avoid both real and apparent conflicts of interest. While it might be technically permissible, as lawmakers may not have been able to foresee these unique circumstances, we are particularly concerned about Commissioner Lober's decision to enter into a privileged attorney-client relationship with the accused. Commissioner Lober has stated publicly that this decision was made after discussions with the county attorney. For many, though, the decision appears to be a knowing dismissal of an elected official's solemn duty to protect the public trust. Especially at this difficult time when our community is reeling from recent arrests, we would ask this body not only to follow the letter of the law, but to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. I also want to share just a couple concerns regarding free speech that I've also sent to the county attorney. First of all, I recently came here to raise constitutional issues related to Commissioner Lober's retaliation against a member of our organization who criticized him on Facebook. In 2005, in Bennett v. Hendricks, the 11th Circuit held that plainly private citizens cannot suffer adverse employment actions at the hands of public officials who are not their employers. Such retaliation is also apparently in violation of the First Amendment, as it would clearly deter a person of ordinary firmness from exercising his or her First Amendment rights. Commissioner Lober is on record saying he intends to continue this kind of behavior, and in silence, the County Commission appears to accept it as policy, which may expose the Commission to civil suits. Since speaking to the Commission about this matter, many local voters have also contacted their commissioners, and we are awaiting your response. Secondly, Volusia's county attorney recently advised county council members not to block residents on their social media pages in order to protect constituents' rights to free speech. Local voters have reported that Commissioner Lober has blocked them on Facebook after political disagreements, and they have asked me to inquire whether Brevard has a similar policy. Finally, it is sometimes unclear online whether county staff are speaking on behalf of the county or the commission. While staff obviously have their own right to free speech, are there any policies that exist to ensure that staff conduct online, including name-calling, bullying, threats, or harassment, does not chill free speech in our community? I hope the commission will let us know how to proceed to ensure
I apologize, but you're out of time, ma'am.
Are addressed to protect the public
I apologize, but you're out of time.
And ensure our
Ma'am, you're out of time.
Constitutional
You're out of
liberties.
time. Seeing no lights on that, let's move on to Mr. Fleming. And before we do that, actually, hold on one moment. I just want to call any subsequent speaker's attention to BCC Policy 55, dealing with public comment. Section 4, subsection G indicates personal, obscene, or slanderous remarks shall not be permitted, so please be aware of that and do what you can to follow it.
That's a piece of cake.
All right.
So I'm here because obviously the county is facing massive problems.
Name and address, please, sir.
My name is Matt Fleming. I live at 1777 A1A in Satellite Beach. The lagoon has died, and we are spending millions of dollars removing septic tanks while developers are being allowed to put new ones in. We're dredging, we're digging in the riverbed, and rejecting the idea that we ought to be bringing ocean water into the lagoon. I think those things are common sense. We have an opioid crisis, and there's no public treatment options available other than getting arrested, being ordered by a court, or being Baker Acted. We have harmful algal blooms that are starting in the St. Johns River. Meanwhile, we are building more new development west into the St. Johns, where that runoff will feed these algal blooms. That's our drinking water. The Supervisor of Elections has engaged in systemic disenfranchisement of voters. Women's rights here are under assault by religious extremists. Schools are being privatized. Public transport is deficient, and it's named SCAT. Developers are not paying their share of the cost for the development, which burdens the community with traffic and more people in our schools and using our infrastructure. Now, Commissioner Lober goes around insulting people online and calling people names, vermin and scum, suggesting that people need to be eradicated or smushed. At what point is that just going to be condemned? Is there going to be responsibility for that? Because I don't think there is. It seems to me that the commission has chosen to ignore all of these things. Our sheriff is spinning a colored wheel with people's faces on it, and no one has even the minimum amount of courage to say, hey, that's inappropriate. So the fact that we're seeing these corruption charges is not a surprise to me. I don't think it's a surprise to most of the people that live in this county. And with that, I'm going to finish with a very simple idea, which is any concept of personal responsibility that is devoid of social responsibility is just greed. Thank you.
Thank you. And number 10, we have Sandra Sullivan. And anyone who's not been addressed up to this point will go ahead and we'll address under item K as in kilo at the end of the meeting.
My name is Sandra Sullivan, and I'm from South Patrick Shores. And this month, the cancer report came out for 32937, indicating higher levels of incidences of cancer in our area. So we also have higher levels of ALS, given past reports. I want to go over what I think are the environmental influences. One thing the report did not address is the concentration of those cancers, whether it is higher as you get towards Patrick Air Force Base. And so historically, before South Patrick Shores, there was a drainage channel from a couple connected dumps as identified on the EPA EPIC study. The aerials show that the South Patrick Shores was built on that drainage channel that was filled in, and then to have drainage on Patrick Air Force Base, they put in a swale. From that swale in 1969, there was a tropical storm with flooding, 5 to 8 inches of rain, so that flooded, so they put in a lake. That lake was put in 69. That's when the Hodgins started. It corresponds to the accretion of that lake. We fast forward to 1988, and we learned that there's a vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is a Class A carcinogen, is a breakdown product of TCE, trichlorinated ethylene. So that lake, they find out in 88, when they do their first environmental assessment, that it's volatilizing vinyl chloride to the air. It has 1,000 times the cleanup level that was found in the ground. And so then, shortly after that report, they put in a drainage channel to the Banana River, and that dissipates the vinyl chloride, but that was the most toxic site, or the most with the most harm value on Patrick Air Force Base. So all the other contaminants went into the river as well. Hence, the ALS cluster started in South Patrick Shores. You should have 2 cases per 100,000 in a given year, statistically, and we have much higher than that. In 1 year alone, we had 6 cases on 8 canals in 1 year. We also have the dump on South Patrick Shores. I brought with me all military stuff, from dishes from the Navy to pieces of aircraft, all things military in here that identify as a military site with similar disposal as is found on the most toxic site on the other side. And we need a more a greater assessment of the area, and I have petitioned the EPA to come in and do a preliminary assessment on those chemicals coming into South Patrick Shores and on the river.
Great, and thank you for wrapping that up at the last minute there. All right, and as I mentioned, we'll address the others that remain in item K.
If anybody wants to see these, you're welcome to.
Thank you. So moving on to H's and Hotel, the first item is a petition to vacate public utility easement for District 4. You know who's speaking on that for staff?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Item H1 is a petition to vacate a portion of a public utility and drainage easement in order to remove an existing pool and screen enclosure from that easement. The property is located on Lot 37, Block 1 of the Twin Lakes of Century subdivision. We sent notices out to county agencies and public utility companies and received no objections, and staff has no concerns with this request.
All right, seeing no lights, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to pass this item.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Smith, a second from Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, moving up, H2, an ordinance regarding amending the Barefoot Bay Water and Sewer District boundary.
Yes, this is the amendment for Ordinance 99-17, which is the boundary for the Barefoot Bay Water Sewer District boundary. This is to accommodate the River Grove Mobile Home Village, which is part of the consent order with the FDEP, and we did the notification, and this is basically getting approval to amend the boundary.
Perfect. Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
All right. Motion from Commissioner Pritchett, second from Commissioner Tobias. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sounds like that carries unanimously as well. All right, next we do have some public comment cards on this one. It's I as in India. Only item we have under unfinished business is this Grand Canal Muck Removal Construction Contract Award. And I'm thinking maybe the best way to handle this is to have staff address it, then we'll address public comment and go from there.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
This is the Grand Canal Muck Removal Construction Contract Award. It's requested that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the chairperson to execute a construction contract substantially in the form of the attached draft contract with Gator Dredging for up to $26,442,444. Gator Dredging's bid includes costs associated with effluent nutrient removal from the water returning to the Banana River Lagoon. There's $10 million of state funding assisting matching local funds from the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Trust Fund to fund the project.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and call up Ms. Colby, Karen Colby. And if you'd give us your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Karen Colby. My address is 1122 Pine Tree Drive, Indian Harbor Beach. That's 32937.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wearing this number 5 in memory of a child who died of brain cancer. I want to talk to you about this canal, please, and just delaying the dredging, please, to give us a chance to look at the results. I personally have 6 children. We swam in that canal closest to Sampson's Island, as some were just nursing infants still. And what's the sad thing is we used to be able to see the water. Now we can't see 3 inches. I haven't been in that water since 2018. I haven't fished, haven't shrimped, haven't anything. To be able to get the chance to re-examine the dredging as a delay, not a stop, but a delay. I believe it needs to go, but we need to handle it like hazardous waste. If they're going to dump it on the side of the road on the Pineda Causeway, that's going to seep right back into the lagoon. And when it's dry, it's going to blow. When it blows, it's going to blow onto us again. And they're going to put it in an agricultural place. Then I want some kind of assurance that this isn't going to get into our food supply or be used in an area where animals graze, where potentially organic cows are eating organic grass, and they're fed with stuff fertilized by what they're calling fertilizer, which is actually muck. And I know, Mr. Smith, you're in my area, and I know that cancer means a lot to you. I've lost family members. I've lost neighbors. We just had a funeral 2 weeks ago for a 17-year-old brain cancer victim. That's the number 5. We were told 5 people don't care. So, and her favorite color is pink, and she liked glitter. She had brain cancer at Satellite High School. She's not alone. There are many sick. There are many, many sick people. And if we just say delay enough so that we can look at the amount of what's in there before you guys put it on the side, before they put it on the side of the road. I mean, that is not safe. It's not okay. It's not okay with any of us residents. It might be okay with an engineering firm, but it's not okay with me. It's not okay with my family. It's not okay with my neighbors. My neighbors are dead, most of them that I grew up with on Micanopy Court. I have a whole list of dead people. It's not funny anymore. They've all died from environmental cancers, Hodgkin's, brain cancers, breast cancers, testicular cancer, prostate cancer. It's not good. Leukemia. I've got a guy in a house whose the previous owners died of leukemia. What's the odds? You buy a house, you catch leukemia? This isn't funny. And yes, it's all related to the dredging because you see that stuff flows in the aquifer. So what comes up out of your shallow well and sprinkles into the air on my street was in the canal maybe a week ago. We don't know. And when there's hurricanes coming and the water level rises, this stuff comes up with it. And as the sprinklers go, it goes too. I'm not asking you to not dredge. I believe in dredging, but I want you to please, please investigate what's in there. I vote for you, so please help me. We want to live. Thank you.
Just a real quick question for you before you run off. I'm sorry. Do you have any ideas in terms of what you're concerned about specifically in the muck? I mean,
Yes,
is there
sir.
one or more substances?
Arsenic, lead, mercury, vinyl chloride, PFOS, PFA, hold on, I have to write it down because of dyslexia, PFBA, which is actually in our drinking water because it comes underneath the river and they're putting an extra ingredient in our water. Us special people beachside get something that mainland people don't get. You see, because all the beachside schools, all 9 tested positive. Since the beachside schools don't get their independent water source, we have it in our homes too. It's in your house, it's in whoever said they lived in Satellite Beach, South Patrick Shores. Anywhere beachside has it. Every single school, every single rec center, every single swimming pool, every one of them. And I was told by somebody that if you dig a new pool, it causes the vapors to come up that way where it's aerated to the air, causing the vinyl chlorine, ethylene, VC, whatever it's called, VCE, to come up towards the new hole is, and that puts it into the air in a vapor plume. And that's when the last time they did a bunch of this messing around, the ALS came. We need help. We need testing. I want the muck gone, but I want, please, a slight delay so we can test.
I appreciate that. Let me ask Virginia, if I may. Do we routinely, or have we tested for any or some of those chemicals that were listed?
We, excuse me, we tested for the entire suite of EPA priority pollutants in 3 shallow water wells in the South Patrick Shores subdivision. We tested, and I'm going to let Walker address for what we tested in the muck and in the water in the canals.
Thank you.
So for the Grand Canal project, we tested at 22 separate sites. The suite of tests included PCBs, volatile organic compounds, and the heavy metals that she was referring to. In addition to just testing for the concentrations specific to the heavy metals, there's 2 additional tests that were included, which includes something called the leachability test, where the leachability test basically is intended to mimic natural weathering and determine whether or not the heavy metals would be released from the dredge sediments if they were placed on the ground and, standard the rain and wind weathered them, would it leach down into the ground that it was sitting on. There is also what's called the elutriate test, where it mimics the agitation that we expect to see when dredging occurs during the hydraulic dredging. The material will be transferred from the dredge area to the dredge material management area via hydraulic tube, so it's a mixture of water and solids. So there will be a tumbling element, and the elutriate test is intended to mimic that tumbling and determine whether or not those heavy metals will be released into the water that will ultimately be decanted from the dredged material. And in both cases, for the leachability and the elutriate testing, the results came back as what's the term I'm looking for? Below
detection limits?
Yeah, but minimum below the minimum detection limits for the heavy metals that were tested.
So let me ask you, in terms of the items that you test, how do you determine which particular substances you'll test for and which you won't?
So there's a standard list that we go by. There's EPA lists. So it typically includes a battery of pesticides, again, volatile organic compounds, PCBs, and then the heavy metals as well.
So in terms of, and I don't know if there's a specific requirement or a set of requirements for what we have to test for. Is there a specific set of required tests that we have to perform?
Yes, there is testing that is done as a function of the permitting requirements for DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers, the state and federal permits. There's also testing that is done on the solid material before it leaves the dewatering site, so that we make sure that we're not polluting the agriculture, taking a contaminant from one place and relocating it to somewhere else.
So in terms of the testing that we do, are we doing anything over and above the minimum threshold that we're required to get those permits? Either in terms of the number of sites or the number of compounds that we test?
We did do additional testing beyond what was required for the permits. Last summer, when the cancer Thank you. Last summer, when the cancer concerns emerged in the community, we went out and collected, was it 8 more samples in the Grand Canal area and immediately adjacent to Patrick Air Force Base, you know, in addition to everything that was done for the federal and state permits. And sorry, one other factor, because I heard what she said about concerns about things, you know, blowing from the site, the dredge material management site along Pineda. The contractor, Gator Dredging's, their means and methods, they plan to put that material, pump it directly into geotubes, so they will contain that material. It won't be loose running around or, you know, exposed to the air on that site. It will be contained in geotextile containers.
Can I ask a question?
I apologize since we're limited to 3 minutes. Yeah, if Ms. Sullivan happens to ask it, I mean, I can't stop you from whispering it to her as you walk back there and she comes up. Ms. Sullivan, good to see you again.
Thank you. Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. Okay, so one of the things is something called emerging contaminants. For example, in 1988, they didn't know about vinyl chloride. It was just an emerging contaminant. Today, an emerging contaminant would be the munition chemicals like RDX and the PFAS. And they did do, when she said they did additional testing, it was only for PFAS. I had requested that they test the outfalls, which was recommended by the EPA, because that would be, we have a disposal site on South Patrick Shores, and they refused to test that. So that's a red flag. Furthermore, the report itself is a red flag because there was an omission of the dump site. It was cropped from the two aerials, and it was not mentioned in the history section. So therefore, when you're doing testing, you want to look at what is in the area. And they put a disclaimer in the report that says we do not consider what the toxicity is in the area. You have to look at the specific toxins that are in the area, and you have to look at where they're flowing, the hydrology, to know what to test for and where to test. Otherwise, you're going to miss things. And so I want to go back to the PFAS. The PFAS was over the 0.7 parts per billion or trillion or whatever it is, 0.7, it was over 1. And on those canals, the EP, I've talked to the DEP, they're still trying to figure out as an emerging contaminant what the safe handling of this is. So that in itself is a reason while we're figuring this out to just delay the dredging. And furthermore, I want to say this, is I dug up a report in 1995 that showed that the muck sampled at Patrick Air Force Base once they started draining that LPF site was exceedingly high risk of cancer, to the point that they posted do not fish signs and do not swim signs. And I'd like to know if the county was ever informed of that, because we're like so close to Patrick Air Force Base that it's going to affect us as well. So I mean, I think that needs to look into it. It raises serious concerns about the contaminants that are in there and whether the proper contaminants were tested. For example, the munitions chemicals and the PFAS handling as emerging contaminants until we learn more, and because of the red flags in the report that they didn't consider the toxicity of the base to the north. Patrick Air Force Base was not mentioned. They did not mention the disposal site on South Patrick Shores. And my concern is that we had high levels of ALS following the drainage of LPS to the Banana River and down in our way, disturbing them because they're going to cause another high incidence of ALS again. And I mean, to have 6 cases on 8 canals in 1 year is just insane. Thank you.
Miss, if I can breathe here.
I got 7 seconds left. And arsenic is over not the residential, but the commercial level. It's at 22.6. And as
Sorry, you can finish the sentence.
Okay, as it decomposes, what happened in Tampa is it gets much bigger and it bioaccumulates in plants. So if it's on agricultural land and it bioaccumulates in plants, that's a problem as well.
All right. Okay, one question for you. In terms of testing, have there been any other requests of which you're aware, whether you've made them or any neighbors of yours may have made them, to either DEP or EPA or any other state, federal, or local governmental agency or entity to test? Because my concern is if the county staff is telling me essentially that we've tested everything that we think is appropriate to have tested for, my thought is if there's a basis to delay, it would really have to be on there being some realistic expectation that some other governmental agency or entity is going to either indicate they will or won't test.
Yes, I have petitioned the EPA to come in and do a preliminary assessment because Patrick Air Force Base is responsible for the contaminants coming off the base. That would include the vinyl chloride if there is a vinyl chloride plume coming into South Patrick Shores. It would include the drainage, which is documented with the EPA into the Banana River, and that they would come in, and what we're asking for is them to do oversight in Patrick Air Force Base doing a preliminary assessment, which would give us that data.
Okay, what I may end up doing after we have this other public comment is I may end up handing over the gavel and moving to continue it, again, depending on what we hear from the next couple of comments, to the first regular meeting after the break. And I know that's not going to give anyone enough time to test, but my hope is at least you'll have an indication by that point in time that either the EPA or the DEP will or will not test.
I appreciate, just it gives us time to get more information as well. Thank you
so much. All right, let's go ahead and have Craig Wallace come up, please.
Good morning. Craig Wallace, Satellite Beach. I live on the Grand Canal. I moved in about 3 years ago. I know there's a lot of history that has been discussed here about people that have a lot of diseases or a lot of cancers and so forth that have been attributed to the chemicals and whatever appears to be in the soil and water. I'm an engineer. I usually don't take things at face value. I like to evaluate and make my own decisions based on scientific information and facts and so forth. I've worked very closely with Virginia Barker and her team that have done the evaluations of they've done the requested testing, and they've gone over and above the request. This is a project that's been going on for, 5 years plus. So there's been plenty of opportunity to identify any potential problems. They've had a lot of stuff thrown at them. They've done a lot of evaluations. They've responded to every question that has come from the community. So I think it's, we've done they've done the due diligence, in my opinion, to show that at least the removal of muck is not going to be at risk to the community. And I say that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue on with other evaluations of stuff that's coming out of Patrick Air Force Base. I think that's legitimate. There may be additional things that need to be looked at there. But as far as the removal of muck, they've addressed the issues with the transfer site. They understand and know how to deal with the upland management issues when you dump it somewhere. So you've got a team of staff here that has a lot of knowledge and a lot of background and then we have, on the other hand, a lot of citizens that are making accusations on things that, may not be scientifically based or may be, but, it doesn't appear to me to have the credence of what Virginia staff has done. So, and I'd also like to just give a shout out to her staff. They have responded to every question. I live in a community of 350 people. I've interacted with them. They've been out. They've given presentations, over probably a dozen presentations in the area. A lot of issues have been thrown at them. They've addressed each one of them to my satisfaction anyway. And I'd like to see this project finally go forward. If there's a delay, I think it's still important that we move forward. But I would really like to see it move forward without a delay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up we have George Rosenfield. Morning, sir. If we could have your name and address, please.
My name is George Rosenfield. I now live in Sea Park. And I apologize. If I knew I was going to speak of this subject, I'd have sat up front. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I lived in Sea Park now part of South Patrick Shores, from January 1957 through to June of 1965. Our water source was from a 30-foot shallow well for about the first 5 or 6 years of my 9 years living there. And then the water came in from Melbourne, and and it was different water. But my wife died 4.5 years ago from leukemia. And I've called that author, Whalen, I think is his name, from the newspaper twice. Each time he had an item in the paper recently about cancer in South Patrick Shores, and he's never returned my call. I didn't know it was going to be brought up here. I sent it in earlier. She also had some previous cancers. Some years ago, she had a precancerous lump, pre-breast cancerous lump removed, and she had other cancer removed from her leg, from one of her legs. One or two of the 3 types of cancers removed from her legs were unidentifiable. One, they think, was caused by a chigger bite, which we did a lot of camping, and she could have got it at any place. So it's quite possible whether or not her leukemia goes back to South Patrick Shores, what they're finding out now. And at sometime in the middle, while we lived up north, they found that there was a island of cancer just south of Patrick Air Force Base. They figured it was due to the radar that used to be right on the southeast corner, that the ground lobes of the radar reached out about 300 yards and caused cancer, which was in the I forget the name of it, that first development that was right, tailor-made development, and it didn't reach as far as Sea Park, that they said, so who knows. But I just want to say that she also had leukemia. That could it be from what they're finding now about South Patrick Shores area? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, seeing as how we have no lights, I think the policy, and please correct me, Ms. Bentley, if you're wrong, is that Commissioner Pritchett, all right, then I'll pass it on over.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Barker, a couple questions. If we did go ahead with this, are they going to start doing the removal actually? Are they going to be able to get to doing the actual muck removal before July?
Definitely not. The first thing that they will need to do is build a turning lane off of Pineda for trucks to be able to access the dredge material management area, and that construction will take months.
Okay, so because I want to throw out, so that would actually give that little hesitation of time if we're looking to see if the EPA will do extra testing, which kind of makes me think through a process too, because the testing we did was what was in compliance with the EPA. So maybe they'll have something else, but I wouldn't imagine that they would even contradict themselves saying we didn't test for all the things that we think are going to cause harm. So I can't even imagine them coming to the table with that. I like that we did a couple extra things. I got to tell you, muck is nasty, period. I can't imagine finding anything in muck that's not just disgusting when you think about what it is. You know, we hate the leakages coming off of, sewer lines, but this is concentrated, that stuff, and it's just nasty stuff. So on that, and thinking about that this company is going to contain the waste, I think is a big plus. And then I asked you about when we got it to the place it was being, you said it was going to be treated on the island, which I like. Been a conversation for a long time that if it's possible to go ahead and get at least the initiation going on this, and if something terrible comes up, I'm guessing you would stop it or come back and report to us, we can't do this, we have a problem.
Killed by a hit-and-run driver while on an evening run in 2017. The track at Wakulla High School is now named the Coach Paul Hoover Track and
concerns in the South Patrick Shores area and the testing. So there is one kind of testing that is planned for Ms. Sullivan's yard at the end of June, unless the dates for that have changed. And then there's additional EPA testing in the South Patrick Shores community that the dates have not yet been set. There is not, to my knowledge, any plan for any other agency to do further testing of the muck. So, I guess it would depend on what the findings were and whether, if they found something, whether that was something that we already tested for in the muck and did not find that those constituents had migrated or been transported by stormwater to the canal system. There could be contaminants in the mainland that have not made it to or are not currently present in the canal muck. And so, just even if they found something on the mainland, it wouldn't necessarily mean that it's a concern for the muck.
If they found something, would you be able to test the muck for that if it's an environmental hazard?
Yes, we certainly would be able to.
Okay, so my thought, sir, is that I think we could probably do this. I think it's going to take a long time before they actually get to the project. And then, therefore, we'll have staff come back if they find something relevant, and maybe we can make a shift decision here on how we're handling it.
Let me hear from Commissioner Smith, and then I'm going to jump in on that.
Thank you. Well, I've heard the testimony and I've heard the concerns. I've had many people in my office over the last however many months. I am concerned about cancers. I had cancer myself, so I can't get any more concerned than that. I also lost my oldest sister and my mother to breast cancer, so it's not something that I take lightly. I've listened to the comments by both staff and to our constituents, and I just don't think it's possible or even likely that some element will be discovered in the next 6 weeks or 6 years that we should know about that we don't know about now. So my overriding decision on this is that, yes, muck is nasty. It's got terrible stuff in it. We know that it does. An alphabet assembly of bad stuff. We've tested over and above what we're supposed to. And I think it's better that we get the muck out rather than just let it sit there and continue to contaminate the water. So I think that the benefit of getting it out is far, far superior to any detriment that would exist if we left it in there. So I'm in favor of this.
Question, Ms. Barker. With respect to this, if we go ahead and, as Commissioner Pritchett suggested, we sign off, we pass this, if we do find out that the EPA is willing to test or DEP is willing to test for some additional substance, what position will we be in? And this may be a better question for Ms. Bentley as well with respect to that contract. Will we then be able to say, hey, guys, it's going to be tested, please hold? Or are we still on the hook for whatever obligations we'd otherwise be assuming? Ms. Bentley.
I believe you probably have to amend the contract to address the new concerns. These would be unexpected conditions.
I mean, I don't mind supporting it if we support something that includes an amendment essentially saying that if DEP or EPA expresses willingness to test for some additional substance that's not been previously tested for, that we would put things on hold pending the outcome of that. I mean, I could support that, but I don't know where anyone else is on it. Mr. Tobias.
Thank you. And I guess this would be for Ms. Barker. How would that impact the terms of the contract? I imagine that, with mobilization of machinery, and would you expect costs to go up whether or not that condition was exercised or not?
Right. I mean, I think any change that we would want to make now outside of a competitive process could definitely result in a cost increase. And, they're going to mobilize one set of equipment for developing the DMMA. They would mobilize different equipment for starting the dredging. So,
and of course, without another bid process, you don't know whether or not that would be $5, $500,000, or $5 million. Is that fair?
Correct, especially on a project of this scale at $26 million
I understand.
contract.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pritchett.
I think I kind of agree with Commissioner Smith on this. I'm not sure they're going to come up with something, but in the rare case that they do. But here's the thing. If we're a responsible county, we're doing this, and all of a sudden somebody finds something horrific that we didn't even think of that's in that, well, of course we're going to stop and do something different because cause no harm. I mean, we're not going to do something to harm our community. So that would, I'm thinking that would just us being responsible that, if we do this in a couple months, they find something, we're going to have to put on a pause and do something different. It's only appropriate. So therefore, I think, it's going to take a long time to set this up. It's going to be months and months before they can actually get to the project. And I think if we went ahead and took that pause, we would do this at that time anyway. So I'm in favor of this today, knowing that you guys, if you found something bad, you're going to stop it.
And, one of the things that we could do if they found something bad is that we could negotiate with the contractor to add a component in their treatment train to clean that up, which, might be far better than leaving it in the contaminating the lagoon.
I'm just concerned they may have us over the barrel at that point, because when we've contracted with them, they could essentially quote any price they want for cleaning it up. And I'm not trying to twist anyone's arm into doing something they're not comfortable doing. Seeing as how the appetite appears to be up here, it sounds like this is going to pass. I'm not going to bother making a motion to continue it, but I am going to vote against it. I like the idea. I just don't like the idea of doing it prior to knowing whether we'll have additional testing or not. So if someone wants to make a motion, I'll certainly entertain that.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm sorry, I can't permit it. I apologize.
I'd like to make a motion to pass this ordinance, please.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Smith, second from Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor?
Aye.
And then any opposed? Nay. Passes 3-1 with me in the nay. Okay, moving on. Looks like we don't have anything on J. It appears that one item was deleted. So K, public comment. I'm going to pick up where we left off with G, public comment. We have Karen Colby. And if you could put your name and address again, I appreciate it.
I'm Karen Colby, Indian Harbor Beach. Hi, I know of something that they didn't test for, and it's the PFAS, and it's a leachability test, and that was not checked for. They also did not test the canal heads that we asked them to. They tested random sites that were very safe, unlikely to produce anything. We could tell you where the stuff is. It's where it came out into the river and settled, because it's heavy. They didn't look where we know where it is. It almost, in my opinion, as an individual, seems conveniently orchestrated. I'm sorry, I'm upset right now.
I understand.
I have to go home and see a neighbor that's dying. So what we want to do, and they're not on a canal. My in-laws just sold their house on the canal at a huge loss to get out of there. They didn't want to die. Dementia can also be caused by the aluminums. Anybody on a canal is at risk of the aluminums. If they're swimming in it or eating fish from it, the fish have aluminum in them. So do the shrimp. I wanted no fishing signs, no shrimping signs, please, in the contaminated area. Any area that has any number at all of PFOS or PFOA needs to be shut down from fishing, shrimping, swimming, kayaking, waterboarding, supboarding, anything. It's derma, it crosses through the skin. I don't know the word for it. You know I'm a mom. And I appreciate your support, sir. I really do. We want to live. I keep saying that enough. Maybe somebody will listen. They did not test the canal heads on purpose. That's where the stuff stagnates. You can see it. I see people letting their kids go down slides into those canals in South Patrick Shores and the waterways, and it gives me a horrible feeling that those kids are not going to be there for their weddings. I have people that weren't at my wedding because of this stuff. Okay? I hope you feel better, Mr. Smith. I didn't know you had cancer too. My niece's dog died of cancer in 6 days after she moved in South Patrick Shores. Huge lumps developed on its neck and it died. The other one's sick too. This isn't funny anymore. Would you want your baby out crawling around in the backyard? seriously, knowing the incidence of death now. And I'm really glad this company, once they're awarded this contract, you can't take it away. That's what I don't understand. If you table it, you can always think about it, get those results from those canal heads, and then reopen it. Because in my opinion, that no one has looked for PFAS in there. They didn't know about it. We came up with it. And Aaron Brockovich came all the way here to say, she's not Superwoman. We have to be. So you're looking at it. 55-year-old mom of 6, native Brevard County resident. I'm not moving. I will be here. And I've got a lot of neighbors and friends, and we are going to make sure that we get safe. We're in Indian Harbor. It's coming down to our land. Y'all are forgetting we're 329372. It's not just South Patrick Shores. We have canals too down there that are so disgusting. No one's tested them. They tested the city hall at Satellite Beach. What the heck? That used to be a fire department. Of course there's stuff there. I know this because I've lived there. Thanks for your respect.
Thank you. Right, next up we have David Kearns. If you could put your name and address on the record, I'd appreciate it, sir.
David Kearns, 668 Dunbarton Circle, Northeast, Palm Bay, Florida, 32905.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm just back to the Isnardi matter. Florida Statute 112.313.7a certainly applies in this case. Conflicting employment contractual relation, nor shall any officer or employee of an agency have or hold any employment or contractual relationship that will create a continuing or frequently reoccurring conflict between his or her private interests and the performance of his or her public duties, or that would impede the full and faithful discharge thereof as his or her public duties. The operative questions I have regarding the situation of retaining Mr. Lober as the attorney for Mr. Isnardi was the legal representation of County Commissioner Chair Isnardi's spouse, David Isnardi, done free of charge or pro bono, or was there a fee involved? Why was the idea to represent Mr. Isnardi not immediately nixed by one or both commissioners? Was the remainder of the Board of Commissioners informed of Mr. Lober's decision to represent Mr. Isnardi? Was the board attorney informed? Is there a written record of this exchange? And was the what was the commission attorney's response? Was Commissioner Lober aware of Florida statute regarding a conflict of interest and others that I have here, that I could read those as well, that certainly may apply, though they're not as flattering? Was the Commission Chair, Christine Isnardi, has she considered resigning in light of recent developments in her husband's very public case involving the FBI, the FDLE, and charges therein against her husband? And has the board considered asking Commission Chair Isnardi to resign? And if not, why not? And each commissioner is invited to weigh in on the matter. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Seeing no lights, we'll move right along to Mr. Burns. If you put your name and address on the record, sir.
Robert Burns, Viera, Florida.
Thank you.
Is the time supposed to start after we give our address or before? I'm just asking for clarification.
I've been trying to be consistent with everyone.
Okay, I've noticed.
That's what's recalled.
For a few people, it started when they got up. Mr. Kearns started when he got up to walk up here. I was just curious what the policy was.
I'll just make use of the time you have, sir.
Thank you. I didn't plan on speaking this morning, but as a result of some of the things I heard today, I decided to go ahead and speak up. First, I want to commend you on your handling the duties of the chair today and trying to maintain your decorum. You've done better than you have in the past.
Appreciate it.
I'd ask that you not interrupt me during my public comments. Thanks.
I apologize.
Thank you. I do find it troubling, however, that you referenced a policy on public comments that you've tried to enforce today unnecessarily on two public comment speakers. A standard that you're holding them to that you don't uphold yourself, acting in your capacity as the vice chair and today as the chair. I would ask that at a minimum you hold yourself to the standards that you expect the public to hold themselves to when addressing this dais. Before that, I've given you ample opportunity to address some of the misstatements, misinformation, and false statements that you've made personally about myself here on the record on this dais. I've given you that opportunity publicly. I've given you that opportunity through your district email. You asked me to provide documentation that goes towards some of the claims that you made about me, stating that I was race baiting you. You emailed me and asked me to send you that. I sent you the lawsuit that was filed against you, the civil rights lawsuit that was filed against you by a previous client, as you requested. I think that substantiates that you had a problem with the minority client. Full disclosure, that lawsuit was dismissed. However, it does exist, and you tried to imply that it did not. I'm certain that you knew of it since you were listed as one of the defendants on the case. I'm giving you yet one more opportunity to correct the misstatements that you made about me and the false statements that you made about your actions on social media before I proceed with two separate complaints that I have notarized to be filed today with two separate jurisdictions that you fall under. Not only are you subject to the laws and the regulations of this board, but you also, as an attorney, you fall under the professional ethics standards of the Florida Bar, which you have kind of lost your way and kind of surpassed the threshold that would substantiate a complaint for that. So today I'm giving you one more opportunity to correct the record before I go forward with any other measures. Thanks.
That's very kind of you. Don, I don't know if we need to do a break for this, but I had anticipated at some point I might have some more dishonest commentary coming from certain individuals. Do you still have available those slideshows? Let's go ahead and start with the one pertaining to the lawsuit that was referenced. And as he's doing that, Ms. Bentley, by virtue of someone being listed as a defendant in a lawsuit, is that in and of itself a certainty that that individual was served or that they had any way of knowing?
No.
Thank you. I didn't think so either. And I'll give you a few moments to pull that up. And it's been some time, so I'm a little rusty. I didn't know when this gentleman would come back, but let's go ahead. We'll help him and give him a little bit of fuel for his complaints he says he's going to file. Oh, I apologize. As this is happening, Commissioner Pritchett.
Okay, just a recommendation. I think we're entering into a long time period here where there's going to be a lot of emotional responses, and there's a lot of confusion right now. People are angry, not that they shouldn't be. I mean, we got some things we're going to have to deal with, but I think in this room we need to probably try to maintain some type of professional environment from the public and from the front. You know, we can't control what goes on out there with public media or what's going out there in municipalities, but I think we need to maybe try to abide by the pledge of civility moving forward, that we're going to try to avoid personal attacks and comments and work hard towards doing county business. I think it's what we need to do. You know, you people could be hot about issues, but if it's something we're not voting on, you know, I think it might be something we need to do that pertains to county business. My opinion, I think it would set up some good ground rules and that we won't be walking down this path every meeting. And I just think we need to start behaving like grown-ups.
Yeah, well, we're going to go ahead and pause for about 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 11:23 or thereabouts, or 11:22.
agree with Commissioner Pritchett. You know, it's very common in this period of time that we find our culture in that we go point, counterpoint, anger, hate. You did this, you did that, I didn't do that. You know, at some point we have to, we, particularly the folks up here, we have to realize that no matter what we do, at any given time, 50% of the people aren't going to like what you did or said, and 50% are going to love you. And I can tell you, having done this for 4.5 years, that next week, 50% of the people that hated you last week, they might love you this week, and vice versa. So I'm just saying that we need to start the ball rolling from the commission. We have to be above the fray, understand that no matter what you do or what you say, you're going to get pot shots taken at you. You can't take everything personally. And there are some people that no matter what you do, they're not going to like you. It's just the way it is. And the point, counterpoint, it's destructive. And it doesn't serve any purpose other than to create more inflammation and inflammatory comments. And as somebody said to me during the break, we have to be concerned about turning this into the Jerry Springer show. I don't want that. We're professionals up here. We were elected by the people to run the county business, not to get involved in personal turmoil. So I just wanted to pass that along. Those are my thoughts, and I hope that you folks out there and the folks up here take that to heart.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Smith. I'll tell you, I agree that you'll probably have some percentage of folks that like what you do and some percentage of folks that don't like what you do. But I think when you have misstatements and defamation that occurs with respect to things that either weren't said or things being taken so far out of context as to be essentially false, I think it's necessary to let people make their judgments based upon the facts as opposed to facts as twisted or contorted by certain individuals. So I'm not going to waste too much time today addressing this, but I think as to the suggestions that were made dealing with race, I'd like to go ahead and address those flat on and just straight ahead. I think that's necessary. So Don, if you get me fired up here, and if SCGTV could just keep on the slides, I'd appreciate that. And I'm hoping the audio works as well. So this is a Facebook post from the gentleman that just came up from last year indicating, will you defend me? Probably not. I heard you don't defend minorities. So he talked about a lawsuit a few minutes ago as supposed evidence, I would assume, of me being either racist or having something against other folks. And the case is a case involving a gentleman who I represented for a short period of time named Aldo Ray Johnson, Jr. What wasn't mentioned in context is apparently something that's conveniently forgotten by a lot of folks who come up here to attack, is that this individual in this case had no less than 5 attorneys. First, he had Steve Henderson, who moved to withdraw on July 11th of 16. The motion was granted in July of the same year. Next, he had Jennifer Kerwin, who moved to withdraw on August 24th, 2016. Motion was granted August of the same year. Third attorney was Charles Nervine, who unfortunately passed away since. Moved to withdraw August of 16. Motion was granted September of 16. Then he had me. I moved to withdraw in October of 16, and my motion was granted November of 16. The basis of my motion wasn't he's black or he's a minority. And his fifth attorney was Erica Feinswag, who moved to withdraw on October 30th. I don't know whether or not actually, that may be a mistake. I don't know that she did move to withdraw on October 30th. I think that may have been copied from the previous line. I think she actually did stay on the case, so I'll go ahead and correct that. But the point is he had 5 attorneys, so I don't know if the 4 prior to the 5th one were all racist or what the contention is here. So on January 22nd of 2018, with Attorney Feinswag representing him, Mr. Johnson entered a plea and was adjudicated guilty and convicted of multiple violent felonies in the case in which I withdrew from having represented him. So this is a document that was filed in that case. It's an order adjudging the defendant incompetent to proceed. It indicates in pertinent parties not competent to proceed, not currently competent to proceed, and that it addresses psychiatric care. It says he's incompetent to proceed due to the defendant's mental illness. He's incompetent to proceed, incompetent to proceed. Meets the criteria for involuntary placement, manifestly incapable of surviving alone. There's a substantial likelihood he's going to inflict serious bodily harm on himself or another person. So what's this lawsuit we heard about where I got sued? So Aldo Ray Johnson Jr. versus Circuit Judge Jeffrey Moll, me with a misspelled name, maybe why I never got served with this, and consequently would have no reason to know that this existed until it was brought up to me, and Jennifer Kerwin, who's also an attorney. So let's see how bad these folks are. So Jeffrey Mall, who I said is a circuit judge here and has been for a long time, he's been a member of the bar for over 30 years. He has 0 disciplinary history on file. I don't think there's ever been anything in the news about him being a racist, and I cannot fathom that being the case. Me, excuse me, is someone cursing? Sir, if you need to curse, I think you need to leave.
You're bringing your personal business into county commission.
It was brought up. Sir, goodbye. Goodbye. You don't get to speak out of turn. I was respectful and gave you 3 minutes. Bye-bye.
You need to answer the
Thank
questions
you.
that I asked you.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Smokescreen bullshit.
I appreciate that you can express yourself so eloquently without using profanity. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, if we could go back, please. Thank you. So here's me. Not been an attorney any 30 years, but I've been an attorney for a little while here, and I don't have any disciplinary history, despite folks calling to read me to the bar over everything under the sun for political motivation. And then Jennifer Kerwin, who was also sued. She's been an attorney, again, not any 30 years, but long enough, and there's no disciplinary history there either. These are not folks that have a history of doing anything with respect to treating folks differently on account of their ethnicity. The thought is somewhere between absurd and offensive. So what were the allegations about me? Because that actually does matter. Let's see how many of these relate to ethnicity. That I didn't visit him for 3 months. This is what was in the case. I'll get you a copy, Dave. That I told him that I didn't want the case, and that I told him he could get to court faster by allowing me to withdraw. So as to those items, attorney-client privilege unfortunately precludes me from addressing a lot of what I'd like to address, but I think I can get quite a bit out, notwithstanding that. So I can talk about the first one based on public record. The second and the third are a little tougher. So the first one, as to the allegation I didn't visit him for, let me go back, 3 months. The order appointed me to represent this individual in September of 2016. He signed and I filed subsequent to his signing a notice of non-objection to my withdrawing in October. September, October. I was appointed in September. Obviously, I visited him in order to obtain his signature sometime between when I was appointed in September and the time that he signed in October. So as far as the claim of 3 months, it's factually inaccurate based on the court record. So how long passed? I was appointed, as I said, to represent him in September. He acknowledged in his lawsuit that we spoke about my potential withdrawal. Didn't do that through the ether. That was certainly done in person. And hell, if there were a call log to the jail, anyone's welcome to request a copy of that. There's no privilege with my calling the jail to speak with the client. They don't have a privilege line for anyone but the public defender's office. So even if I'd instantaneously learned of my appointment to represent this gentleman, and even if had the date that he signed the document authorizing my withdrawal been the first time I'd ever met with him, his claim that I didn't meet with him for 3 months is objectively debunked. So allegations 2 and 3. The second allegation, I believe, in order was that I told him I didn't want the case. So given that I moved to withdraw, either I didn't want the case or I had some conflict precluding my representation. However, I think something to bear in mind is he had no less than 5 attorneys in just one case. I wasn't remotely alone in withdrawing from the case, and unless you want to start asserting that numerous people are racists and out to get folks, despite every one of those individuals having represented and dealt with minorities time and time again, I don't know how there's any basis to conclude that there's anything untoward about my or any of their withdrawals in this case. So as far as my having told him that he could get to court faster by allowing me to withdraw, almost. Signing a document authorizing my withdrawal would in fact get him a new attorney appointed more quickly and would obviate the need to have a hearing to determine whether or not I should be permitted to withdraw. During that time, he would have sat in jail with his case stalling. So signing that document did in fact get his case moving faster than it otherwise would have had he opposed the withdrawal. So almost. So what was he suing for? Money damages of $2 million plus an unspecified amount for punitive damages, plus an additional $10,000 for each day he was in custody. I think he may have even said wrongfully in custody. I'm not certain on that, though. What wasn't mentioned anywhere in his complaint, or in anything pertaining to this? He didn't say it had anything to do with race. He didn't say it had anything to do with ethnicity. Why? Because it had nothing to do with it. It was never once mentioned. But I suppose when you're race baiting, it's convenient to turn a non-issue into an issue. So let's see what the judgment said in this case. And again, I was never served. So I don't know how someone expects me just to, through the ether, realize that a case in another county was pending against me when no one makes any effort to serve me by email or mail or in person. So the judgment said a decision's been rendered and the case is dismissed with prejudice. What does it mean to dismiss something with prejudice? It doesn't mean that it's dismissed and we hate folks of a certain ethnicity. It means it's dismissed and you can't refile it. Typically, that's not done. When cases are dismissed, they're dismissed without prejudice. So why would this be dismissed with prejudice? The record makes pretty clear that there are such glaring issues with respect to what was filed in the complaint that it would be futile to allow him the opportunity to amend it to refile, because there's essentially nothing of merit in what was contained. This is all without me even having to have filed a response. So I think that gives you an idea in terms of how ridiculous this whole thing was. So let's talk about this gentleman's supposed evidence, I'll use air quotes for that, of racism, that I was listed as a defendant, that I was listed as an attorney along with others, including a respected circuit judge and a longtime assistant public defender, by a man who was found by the court to suffer from mental illness, that I was one of at least 5 attorneys to represent the defendant in this particular case. The one and only claim of any potential substance against me is demonstrably false, that I hadn't visited him in at least 3 months, and has been proven so, and you can pull the record up and verify that. It's easy math, folks. And the federal court in which this was filed, which was not in Brevard County, not only dismissed it prior to my having had to file a response, but dismissed it with prejudice so that it couldn't be refiled. Is the court supposedly racist as well? I don't know if that's what's going on here, but we have folks that are coming up here essentially to stir the pot, that are professional agitators, that are able to come here at 9 in the morning because they're not doing something else that's productive or even attempting to do something that's productive. And it's a shame, because we're trying to do good work here in the commission. We're trying to get things done. We had people talking about folks dying of brain cancer and leukemia, and instead we have threats and we have posturing from individuals that are looking at stirring the pot and labeling people racist because they have no intelligent argument to levy against them. So they default to something that's very hard to disprove. So I said I was going to keep it short. I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully the remainder of this meeting we can get back on being productive without anyone else yelling obscenity, which apparently I guess is something else folks do when they have nothing intelligent to say. So I don't see any more public comment. We'll move right on to board reports. Mr. Abate?
I do not have any report.
Ms. Bentley?
No report.
Commissioner Pritchett? No report. I think I've said enough today. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. On May 17th, we had an advisory board workshop that had been in the planning since December of last year. I'd like to thank Kathy Wall for the enormous amount of staff time that went into the hundreds of pages of preparatory work that were passed out to the commission long before the meeting. Initially, I thought that some of those issues could be brought up on the 30th, but the more I think about this, and certainly don't want to blindside anyone, I think that probably waiting till after the break in July in a regular scheduled commission meeting, not a zoning meeting, would probably give the public the greatest amount of time. I will not be amending any of the suggestions that I have, maybe adding some, but not changing the substantive nature that I had. So I would ask that the rest of the county commission peruses the suggestions as well as adding any, so we can all be dutifully prepared for our next July meeting.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I want to just commend you, Commissioner Tobias, for what you handed out. Actually, you had a couple really good ideas in there, like combining the ills. So I think there's some good information there. I think after I looked at the book, it seemed like it was very minor compared to what we had worked in, but you did come up with some good ideas in there I think will be very easy for us to go through. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for getting it to us. I had some time to look through it, and I've been actually researching it.
Well,
so I appreciate that a lot.
So, for the few hours that I spent, I think it would be remiss to mention the hundreds of hours that Kathy Wall, special projects.
They put those things together.
That is a wonderful document for all of us, as well as the public.
When we look through it, you get all the information, so it was good.
So definitely thank you again to Kathy for bringing all that out to
and all the staff and everybody's hard work that we've been working through these boards here lately, trying to to get some direction moving forward. Again, they're advisory boards, and as Commissioner Smith said earlier, these guys volunteer, and I just think they're the heroes of the community, coming along with their expertise, trying to give us ideas and helping us look through things. We don't always go with it, but it certainly helps give us ideas of what other people in the community are thinking. Even though we think we have it all the time, it's good to get another opinion.
Commissioner Tobias, just to put it on the record while we're still here in the sunshine, I'll tell you, I think it sounds like for your EELS suggestion, you're probably going to have the votes that'll make that pass. I like that probably most out of everything you put on there. There's some I intend to support and some that may be a little bit of a harder sell for me, but I encourage you to bring them forward because I think you'll have at least a degree of success.
And there are some things that, and Billy Prasad in my office mentioned about doing away with some of these boards that may turn many of them into subcommittees, the same way the TDC has. So, there can be a filter through another committee, maintain some sort of, or a large degree of citizen participation, and make the process a little bit more streamlined. So certainly, I'm not stuck on those. Those were just starting points. I would be more than excited if additional comments were made that we could keep citizen participation high and make the process much better in such a way that everyone's opinion gets heard. When you have 60-some advisory boards, that's a lot of noise out there. If we were able to streamline that, then the individuals that do volunteer their time, I'm sure we would have a better chance to listen to a fewer number. So that was the goal behind it. I look forward to discussing that in July.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I would just like to add to what I already said, that I appreciate the fact that you were offended by those comments, but I can tell you that few people, if any, besides yourself, really paid much attention to all the detail. I think you could have served yourself the same way just by saying, I patently dismiss everything that's been said about me. I mean, I don't know if you paid attention to my campaign, but if I spent a little bit of time counteracting and talking about all the things that were said against me, we'd still be talking about it. So I'm just saying, we don't need to go down the trail of the Jerry Springer show. We are responsible individuals. We have a tough job to do. Most of the people out there accept that. They respect us for what we do. I don't think we gain respect by counterattacking. That's just my 2 cents.
And I certainly respect your position. I think we all have our own styles, but I certainly would not begrudge or fault anyone for choosing to respond if they feel that something's been said about them that's untrue. And again, I think the question is to what degree someone's comfortable doing that and to what degree it's appropriate. There certainly is an element of subjectivity in that where some folks may let certain things go, other folks might not. How much someone chooses to say about that is also a personal and subjective matter. I think we all have to do what we think is right up here and represent our constituents the best way we can. And, like I said, I'm not going to fault anyone for defending themselves to whatever degree they feel appropriate. Commissioner Pritchett.
I think what might best serve us moving forward is we go back to nobody gets personal. We stop it right away, either it's from that side or whatever. I think we'll get out of this, I know it's called a little funk we've gotten into, but maybe that'll be the way to do it. You know what? We all have different ways of doing things, different opinions. Do I think this man is not trying his best to do this job? Absolutely not. I sit up here with him. We don't always agree. We argue with some things. But if you argue with him respectfully, he listens. And you did such a great job today, sir, also. And even Commissioner Tobias, him go back and forth all the time. But, it's just the way of doing that. And I think somehow we're starting to lose this, and I think we need to get back to that. You are allowed to have a different opinion. You are allowed to be frustrated with things going on. You have that right to do that. But we really don't need to get personal, or we're not going to get done what we're trying to do. And like you said, we just don't want to get, you fight in the mud, you're going to get messy. We just don't need to do that. There's a way to communicate and understand and listen. And once everybody gets all offensive, everybody tunes out. It takes a lot of maturity to keep listening when people are trying to offend you. So there's just a better way for us and for what's going on. But I think that needs to be something we start doing in this room. And we just need to start shutting that down as we're getting personal moving forward. I think we're going to need to do that with the things that are ahead of us.
I don't disagree with you. Let me go ahead and hear from Commissioner Smith, and then we'll have Commissioner Tobias.
I just wanted to give you folks a little words of wisdom that I learned many years ago, and that's basically saying, don't wrestle with a pig because you both get dirty, and the pig loves it.
I've got a little Purell if you'd like. All right, Commissioner Tobias.
So here's my plan. I think the nicest person up here is Rita Pritchett, and the nicest person out here is Mr. Stasek. So I think we should have surrogates out there.
Parker's pretty nice in the back.
But I do want to say, and on a positive here, Mr. Stasek certainly had some differences of opinions, and I think he's probably the model. Certainly, I think everyone should have the ability and the opportunity to voice, but if there was a winner today on presentation, it was undoubtedly Mr. Stasek. You're always welcome here, and thank you for participating.
I'm going to let it end on a good note. I think that's pretty good. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn at 11:45. Thank you.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.